done with translations, I say we bring Larry back on and do our little discussion, discourse, dialogue, debate. What other synonyms with D can I think of? Larry, have I scared you off yet?
Disquisition.
Disquisition? Is that an actual word?
Yes, but that's more like a monologue. But we want a dialogue. So
see, you live, you learn.
Discussion or debate is more like what we do.
Awesome. Okay, so before we start, is there anything from my monologue or soliloquy? I don't even know the difference. Would you like to comment on anything? Voice any agreements or disagreements? And it's okay to disagree with me.
I love the fact that you don't put any limits on on what you're willing to attempt. Because when you start telling yourself that I'm not qualified for this, then you start closing off opportunities. That's said, if you're called in to do interpreting in court and you're not qualified, then that would be a very bad thing. But so translators always have to be clear to the client on what their qualifications are. But when you're taking on new groundbreaking things like you are, that require more creativity, it's great not to set limits on yourself and to be willing to reach out to other people who have knowledge that you don't, to complete a team.
I think it's a fine line between like complete arrogance and stupidity, and being willing to take risks and go where no translator has gone before.
Yeah.
Well, but that again, I surround myself by the people I need. Like if I know I have some blind spots in Spanish because I can't stylistically edit myself, then I will get a native editor and voila, right? Okay, so here's what I want to do. I will ask, where are we? Okay, time-wise. We have some time. I will ask a question, then you can answer it, and then I will answer it, and we'll just move on quickly. And if our friends have any questions for us, they can put them in the chat. Wow, I've missed a lot of chat comments. Okay, good. Yeah. So are you ready for this, Larry?
Oh, yes.
Okay. My first question is your 101 course on translation. Let's see if you can get it in 1 minute and 1 second, or just a really brief description of your philosophy, what to do, what not to do. What would you tell somebody in 1 minute? And I'll shut up.
Well, I tell my students usually the first day of class that in order to be a competent translator, you need to be a good reader of the source language and a good writer of the target language. And going beyond that, if you're actually taking on a translation project, you should achieve as close as you can to 100% understanding of the original text, including the content and any stylistic nuances. And then your job is half done. Then you just have to be able to figure out how to express what you've understood in the new language.
That's right. Does that complete the 101? I didn't want to
that completes the 101.
It was actually a colleague of yours, Claudia, is she Bernstein or Bernstein, right? I think a great Spanish English interpreter and a professor at the U of M. I took her course, and she said,
yeah, Claudia Giannini.
Oh, yeah, but she also goes, I think, by Bernstein. Anyway, maybe it's her husband's name, but it doesn't matter. So she said, you can't translate something you don't understand. And sometimes you have to pound this into translators because they'll ask, how do you translate this? And I ask, well, what does it mean? And they say, I don't know, but how do you translate it?
Yes.
Let me, should I try to give my version of 101 so people can compare?
Please.
Okay, I think you've said it all, but to me, basically the definition of translation would be recreating. I like to use the word duplicate, so making an exact copy of the original in the target language. And when I say recreating, I mean meaning, style, intent, register, everything feasible. So basically it would be the exact same thing, except in a different code. And nobody reading this text would know that it was a translation either. So that would be my definition. I don't know. Okay, now if you were to summarize translation in one sentence, what would you say?
Well, I'm going to cheat on this one and paraphrase a definition that's given by Basil Hatim and Ian Mason, who've written several textbooks on translation. They work at a university in Scotland. Translation is very close to what you said, actually, Vladimir. Translation is the replication of an act of communication in one language, but performed or replicated in another. That's all.
Makes sense. I'm going to cheat as well and quote John Keats. I'm not sure exactly what this has to do with translation, but beauty is truth, truth, beauty. And if you create a true to source translation, if you're also beautiful, if you render it beautifully, then you did a good job. So the poet helped me.
Well, I'm glad you don't fall into the old dichotomy, which is a rather sexist one of beautifulness versus faithfulness.
It's not verses, Why does it have to be verses?
Right.
Sometimes. Okay.
Well, on that we can agree that you can be.
Let's find something we can disagree on. No, I'm just kidding. But I would argue, and this is actually something I learned from one of the later authors, Yaroslav, is that context is everything, because in different contexts, different things matter. And this was actually, maybe you'll disagree with me here as an ATA grader, but I was doing an ATA passage and it was almost literary. And sometimes I opted for stylistic decisions, which didn't necessarily stray from the text, but they made it more beautiful. So in some contexts, I would say beauty and style takes precedence over precision. If it's poetry, if it's fiction, of course, you don't want to take too many liberties, but
Mm-hmm.
Larry just diplomatically says, Okay, good. Now the task gets harder. Can you summarize translation in one key word?
Communication.
Okay, I would agree with that. I might, just to be different, I would say duplication, as in making an exact copy of something, which is also part of communication.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so our next question, and these are all similar, but from a different aspect. What are the musts and must-nots of translation? What are the should and should-nots? And what are the would-be nice, but not necessarily?
Yeah, that's a hard one. I would say that there are very few musts and must-nots, especially in the way of must-nots, because as you said a minute ago, context is so important to translation. So there's nothing necessarily that you can ignore in a source text, although most source texts have them. There's nothing that you must necessarily replicate exactly in a source text, although many source texts have such things. But there's no overarching must or must not. I would only say, from my translation 101, that you must have 100% or as close to it as possible understanding of the source text in order to translate effectively.
I agree. Now I'm curious, when you work with authors, do you usually have direct contact with them?
Well, if I'm translating, what I mainly translate and edit is journalism articles, and we don't have direct contact with the authors.
Mm-hmm. But you recently translated this book. By the way, Rick, it would be great to put in the chat, what is it? The Succession of Somnolent Souls, right?
Yes.
So you obviously had contact with the author.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
The author, Alexander Weitzman, and I were in very frequent contact. Mm-hmm. And if there's anything I didn't understand, I would always put in a marginal note or explain it in an email. Mm-hmm. and his answers were some of the helped give me some of the best insights into how to translate his poetry.
Mm-hmm. That's actually, have you translated other books or articles where you had contact with the author?
Well, in a way. I mean, I've led teams that have done a lot of medical translation or medical communication, where there's a certain office that produces a set of instructions or whatever in English, and they have to be translated into other languages. And there I would routinely go through and talk to a contact person at the office and say, what did you mean by this?
Right.
What's the intent of this question?
Right.
Can the translator render this as such and such? And would that still be accurate? So yes, in that sense, we did talk to the authors, or as close as we could get.
That's actually the point I'm trying to get at, is if you're translating a book, this is not directed to you now, but sort of an impersonal you, is I ask tons, hundreds, even thousands of questions. So don't be afraid, because you're doing the author a service. You're not molesting him, you're not bothering him. So that's super important. But
sometimes they even change things.
This actually happened.
And they'd say, like if I would give a back translation of what what a translator had proposed, sometimes they would say, that's actually clear. We're going to change the English on that, and we'll change our website or change our letter or whatever. It's good to have that communication. It builds trust between translator and client.
I agree, because they will also know that you're doing, honor or justice to their work. So I agree. But I think I said this before, in translation and interpreting. I'll give this example. It's very important to ask the questions very precisely and clearly, because otherwise the authors who love their work or their life, they will go on forever. Like, I had this story. It was actually for a guy who was cheated out of like a semi truck, and I asked him some questions, and instead of answering the questions, he would go on about how horrible his boss was, and I had to get him back on track. So that's super important. But anyway, okay, any should or should nots in translation?
I would say you should not believe that you can write better than the original author did.
Okay. I'll be your devil's advocate on this. What if you can?
If you can, then I would say, well, it depends on what the translation purpose is. If somebody is intending to make an artistic or stylistically impactful translation, then you should ideally be in touch with them and say, this is the decision I made because I think it would work better in this target language for this particular target audience, and chances are they're going to trust you, because you're better in contact with that audience than they are. But if you are not in contact with the author, and you're expected to to sort of render the content of the translation as it is, then I would try to resist the urge to improve, especially if something is illogical in the original, and for whatever reason you don't have a way of solving the puzzle of what they really meant. Maybe it's an author that's inaccessible or deceased, then you should be content to leave something unresolved in your translation if it's equally unresolved in the original.
Like
That's been very hard for me, because I always want to make things 100% clear.
Me too.
And stylistically clean.
Well, this is bad. We're actually agreeing on too many things. No, I understand. I would say it all depends on the context, because very often the side effect of my translations will be that even the authors say this reads better in the translation, they're okay with it, but sometimes it's a mistake. And I think I've given this example, but you were not here. This ended up being a book that we didn't translate, but we actually mulled over the name, because it has the name in Russian doesn't lend itself well to English translation, adekvatnost. And you can't call it adequacy, because this is a false friend. I actually offered something very non-literal. You'll think this is way off track. I offered poison reason, because one, it has the same number of syllables in the rhythm to it, adekvatность, poison, reason, but it basically gets the idea across of what it is, and also you can make a pun of poison reason or poisoned reason, but that's not the point. I did a test translation, and it was beautiful, and I did my normal thing of actually improving the text a little bit, but when the client, who is not the author, he's actually a translator himself, he says, you know, I can definitely feel Vladimir in the translation. In this case, it's not good because the author spent all this time and money with working with one of the best editors in Russia to actually make his text pithy and concise, and that's not your style. And I said, I'm sorry, I agree with you on this, you know, so not always. Yeah. Okay, good. Well, let me answer that same question. We'll move on. You know, in court interpreting, we have, in the code of a court interpreter, it says, I promise not to add, subtract, or alter anything. So I think these are musts and must nots. And I'm not talking about words, of course. I'm talking about meanings or units of meaning, right? You can do whatever you want to with words as long as it keeps the meaning in the register. But that's a must not, is to just up and alter the original because you want to, right? So should and should not, I don't know, I think you pretty much said it all, but depending on the context, if the meaning is more important, still the should would be to keeping beautiful, eloquent style, but sometimes the meaning takes precedence over the style. And yeah, the would be nice is sometimes in the literary translation, puns or turns of phrase are nice, but oh well. Okay. Let's move on. How do you, this is an interesting one. How do you train for translation? I have it in quotation marks. How do you prepare yourself?
How do I prepare myself, or how do I try to prepare others?
Well, both, I guess. But for example, athletes obviously train for a race. Musicians train. And for an interpreter, it's easier because there are all these interpreting exercises. Like, how do you train your mind or your linguistic ability, yours or others, to do a beautiful job or a precise job of translation?
The first thing is reading in the source language. So you get a sense of the variety of styles and options there are for a source text, because then when you encounter a particular word choice, you'll know that the author, if they're a good writer, chose that among half a dozen possibilities, and they chose that particular one for a reason, you know, not that it was the only one. So the more you read, the more you get a sense of the author's choices, and the better you'll be guided in your choices as a translator. Another thing I did in preparing for the ATA exam was I looked at official websites like the BBC news websites and the United Nations websites, you know, where both English and Russian are represented, and I saw how various documents had been rendered in both languages, and compared the two. So, oh, okay, this is how you say, like, this is the standard way of saying this phrase in English, or this is how you say it in Russian. So doing that kind of close reading, and if you're training for speed, then I would say translate, translate in your spare time. Translate, try to see how much you can translate without dictionaries, because looking up references slows you down. You have to do it, of course, but if you're just training, then try without. Try your creativity, try your linguistic resourcefulness, and see how far you can get, so that you have as few things to look up afterward as possible.
You don't think that's dangerous, actually staying away from dictionaries and references?
Well, in this day and age, you can look something up, just in a split second. Mm-hmm. So I guess I would say you can look up things as you go. It really depends on your workflow. Mm-hmm. I like to go back to things later so that it doesn't disrupt the flow of my producing discourse in English when I'm translating. But other people like to, they don't like to leave a sentence until they know it's perfect. So you should
Mm-hmm.
really, I guess that's another way to train, is to know yourself,
Mm-hmm.
know yourself and know how you work best.
Know thyself.
Exactly.
That's interesting. Do you think speed is important in translation? I guess again it depends on context.
It depends on what line of work you're in.
Yeah.
You know, if you have to produce a publication, let's say every week, like, you know, on
Yeah.
at the end of Friday, it's got to be ready
Right.
for layout. Then speed is important.
Maybe that's what I should do. I've never really had projects except the 2 Grant Cardone books where we had a stiff deadline. So I usually take my jolly time, and I've never thought that speed was important. I'm not a fast translator. I'll admit to it. I'm very thorough, but I'm not fast. So, but yeah, that's interesting. My 2 cents is I agree with you about reading in the source language, but I think source and target language. Sorry. And also, what I wanted to give you guys an example, but I left my book in the car about purposeful entertainment, but I'll still give you an example. Like, I love watching Highlander lately, but when I watch it, I pause it anytime that I want to look something up. Like, they used this word recently. It's actually a Spanish word, duende. And maybe the Spanish speakers know it and maybe they don't, but it means like spirit, inspiration. They were describing it as like in a dance, you just lose yourself and you go with the flow, you go with the dance. And they also used it for source fighting. So now I looked up this word, I studied it for like several minutes. It also has another definition, which means like this impish character, and it comes from dueño de la casa, master of the house. So now I taught Julia, my singer friend from Russia, duende. So she's like, oh, duende, you know? And I'm reading this book on Greek mythology. Same thing. If I come upon something which I don't know or even know halfway, I look it up. Like all these, you know, I'll give you an example. It was something about Hermes, the little babe Hermes, who sallied out while his mother was sleeping. And I wasn't exactly sure about sallied out, and it means to make a sortie or an escape like an army would, you know, out of a blockaded fortress. And he uses another funny words, like he spells clue with an EW versus UE. And I looked it up and it's a 17th century spelling. So I guess you can go crazy reading like that, but if you don't go crazy, you get smarter. So.
Yeah, I agree, Vladimir. Research is very important. If you want to be a top translator, you've got to be comfortable doing your research and not be embarrassed by or not be afraid to spend an hour like you did researching one term. In the long run, it's definitely helpful to be able to do that.
But on the other hand, there is always you know, these dichotomies. On the other hand, if I find a solution in translation or interpreting that I'm happy with, I'll probably stop right there and then, and I won't look for something perfect from a very good and workable solution. Even in translation, even in a song translation, if I like it, I'll just move on, you know? Okay, next one. This is a politically incorrect one. You don't have to answer if you don't want to, but what is your worst or silliest or funniest mistake?
Yeah, I thought a lot about this one, and it's one of the milestones that led me to come up with my precept of 100% understanding, because this is a case where I didn't have it. People who are native speakers of Russian probably know what the phrase "Vavilonskaya stolpotvorenie" means. So literally the construction of the Tower of Babel. But when I first ran across this in a Russian text, I had never seen it before, and so I first of all I misread the word stolpotvorenie, and the second thing was I broke it at the wrong place. So I thought it was stol, as in table, повторение, which means repetition.
That's funny. That's very cute.
So based on that misapprehension, that's where my translation of that phrase went, and it was just ridiculous.
Yeah, you have it right. It literally means like creation of a column, but in modern Russian, it actually means like commotion, chaos, pandemonium, you know, etc. So that's the current meaning. That's funny. I don't know about translation. I'm thinking about it, but I had one actually. This is just a misunderstanding. Let's see. Well, I already gave these guys an example from court interpreting when a guy in Spanish said something like "me puse un cosecho," and I didn't know what a cosecho was, and none of my Spanish-speaking friends later did either. So I said I gave myself stitches because coser is to stitch, and the judge was like, "Wait, how did you give yourself stitches?" And I had to re-ask, and it turned out to be some sort of a homemade herb compress. But anyway, I used to have one like that in Russian when I was a kid. So we have the song from the Three Musketeers where the Three Musketeers are singing "Судьбе не раз шепнем merci beaucoup," and what it actually means is that we'll whisper to Lady Fate merci beaucoup, so we'll thank fate more than once. And I took "не раз шепнем" more than once as one word. "Не раз шепнем," we'll never whisper to Lady Fate merci beaucoup. So it was kind of cute.
Yeah, there's a word for that in English. You'll like learning this word. It's called a mondegreen, MONDIGREEN.
How do you spell it? Mondegreen?
Yes.
Let's give our friends a definition. Mondegreen. Okay, I got it. So let's see. Mondegreen, a misunderstood or misinterpreted word or phrase resulting from mishearing the lyrics of a song. Yes. And it comes from Lady Mondegreen from a translation ballad, The Bonnie Earl of Moray. Okay.
Yes.
That's another cue.
Yes, so the word mondegreen is itself a mondegreen.
Interesting. That's actually another cute one. I knew a girl who thought there's the song bring back my Bonnie to me. And yes. Bonnie, of course, means my darling, my beloved. And she said, well, why did you take away his bunny, as in his rabbit, as in his hair, you know?
Yeah, I used to understand that word as body, as, like tela.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't figure out how the person got separated from his own body. But
which word?
Which word?
Yeah.
Body, as in Russian tela. Body.
Yeah, but which term are we talking about?
The word Bonnie. Bring back my Bonnie.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay, should we do a quick intermission? Because I said the word lady and I thought of your amazing translation of Vaše Благородие. Would you honor us?
I haven't had a chance to practice that, so
okay.
I'm happy to go on with the interview.
Okay, maybe another day.
I'm sorry about that.
That's all right, no problem. That's actually
it would be more interesting than hearing me talk, but I didn't have
no. I'm loving hearing you talk. That is one song translation. Usually I have this, chutzpah of translating songs that have been translated before because I always think I can do a better job. But when I heard Larry's translation of this, I was like, no need to. I love it.
Thank you. That's a high compliment.
Yes. Okay.